Josh Arbery, David Hawkey, and we've...
Sorry, we've been demoted now.
We have got enough. We've got enough.
Sorry. Is Jim Fraser with you, Josh?
I can just see Jim coming.
So this is item 11, members, page 61 of the agenda. I'll put up the
Less
recommendations
today.
Yes.
so that we can see them early.
That's all right. It's important. You're tough.
And it's the government policy statement on land transport.
Yeah.
The draft that we had released from government recently. Jim, I think you're...
Yes,
mind the stairs.
just noted. Get my birthday.
Well, Josh, would you like to introduce while
Yes,
there's
sure.
some breathtaking happening?
So we do have a very short presentation. We can then answer questions. We were listening to this morning's presentation by the Rodney and Franklin local boards, and there are some minor wording tweaks that we think we can make that address their particular concerns, as well as obviously attaching their submission to the council's submission. But I'll pass over to Jim and he will take you through the short presentation.
Thank you.
Jim.
Right, well, firstly I'd just like to quickly recap on the purpose and the direction of the GPS, just to give you a bit of a flavour of what's we're submitting on. Now, the government policy statement on land transport outlines the government's priorities for expenditure from the National Land Transport Fund over the next 10 years. It provides guidance on how more than $4 billion will be spent through the National Land Transport Fund each year, setting out how NZTE allocates funding nationally across high-level activities such as road safety, policing, state highways, local roads and public transport. Under the draft GPS, the government is proposing an increase in funding to most activity classes, but a shift in focus to achieve new transport priorities and objectives around safety, access, environment and value for money. To achieve these priorities, the draft GPS proposes an increase in funding to safety improvements on roads and improving the safety of cyclists and pedestrians, public transport, regional roading improvements, state highway maintenance, and along with new investment in rapid transit and rail. It also proposes a significant increase in investment in safe walking and cycling infrastructure and making streets more inviting for people, for places for people. These investment priorities are generally well aligned with the Council's transport priorities identified in the new Auckland Plan and supports investment in projects aligned to the indicative package and the update of the Auckland Transport Alignment Project. The draft submission, therefore, is thus largely in support of the GPS, supporting the GPS's strategic direction, particularly the stronger focus on the safety of people, providing travel choices, enabling and supporting growth, the key role of streets in creating high-quality public spaces, environmental outcomes and value for money. Some specific areas of support are in the government's increased investment priority given to safety and demand management, public transport, walking and cycling and local road improvements and local road maintenance. Support for the new activity class framework, especially the creation of a mass transit activity class and a commitment to a more sustainable funding source for rail and GPS Stage 2, and its flexibility to enable delivery of the Auckland Transport Alignment Project. Support for the mode-neutral approach to transport planning and investment decisions. Support for road policing being funded from a specified, dedicated, ring-fenced fund. A word's dropped off somewhere. The submission also includes a request to ensure that the final GPS gives effect to ATAP by enabling Auckland to receive an appropriate share of the National Land Transport Fund to fund the $16.3 billion investment identified by ATAP, and ensuring the appropriate level of government funding of rapid transit network strategic public transport. The submission also requests early incremental implementation of road safety improvements. This is while the road safety strategy is being developed. Also is suggested a number of minor wording changes, which I won't go through, which are in the report. So these submissions incorporate feedback received from the 6 local boards that were received prior to the agenda closing. Recently received feedback from Rodney and Franklin boards will be attached and submitted to the council submission.
Thank you, Jim. Questions? Complete there. Questions. So just going to where Josh opened up, the particular submissions from Rodney and Franklin, we can incorporate and we can attach their page, or we're comfortable in incorporating?
I think the answer is both.
Both? Yeah. We can do both?
Yeah.
Okay, and on the question of, let's just go over the key points. There was the question of the FAR rates, the financial assistance rates, particularly for road sealing. Josh, you're abreast of that as it applies to a wider category anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the key point is that as part of ATAP, we've assumed that all of the Auckland Transport Program receives co-funding. And so that is what that $16.3 billion of assumed National Land Transport funding goes to. As we discussed yesterday, to give effect to ATAP, you know, there's a series of changes to statutory documents that need to be made. And I think we would probably just rework section 7 of the report so it links more strongly to ATAP, links back to the NLTF assumptions that have been made in ATAP, and then notes that, you know, the changes that might be required could include greater flexibility across activity classes. This is exactly what is said in ATAP. Changes to funding assistance rates, once again, repeats what's in ATAP. And then ensuring all transport investment areas are eligible for co-funding, and then we could say footpath, for example, footpath renewals and road seal extensions. And so once again, that would then be consistent with the financial assumptions in ATAP, and also give effect to the key issue of the Rodney Local Board, which was that seal extensions, can we get co-funding of them?
Okay, thank you. And the issue of road safety, they emphasised as well. We emphasised that in our initial draft. You referred to
yeah, so I think the key point there in terms of rural road safety, which I understood was the key concern of the Franklin Local Board. So we feel that para 35 of the GPS does talk about, so that's the safety section, and it talks about all the key elements of rural road safety that were picked up that the Franklin Local Board wished to emphasise. What we could just make a bit clearer in our submission is that we support paragraph 35 of the GPS. So because it mentions all those rural safety improvements that are priorities.
Right. Thank you. Further questions, members?
No, but I'm happy to move the recommendation. So whilst I've been on leave of absence, I've really appreciated the emails and being able to work through this material, and I support the submission.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Happy to second. And a question?
A second, Councillor.
Seconded and a question?
Deputy Mayor seconds. Question, Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Sayers.
Thanks, guys. So as far as the rural new sealing program, particularly up in Rodney, that would be quite a step change from where we've been historically, would it not, with the assistance package to achieve that?
Yes, so having a look through the draft regional land transport plan last night, there's an $85 million rural seal extension program. I'm probably not as over the numbers as other people in this room, but my understanding is that is much more than we've spent in that in recent years.
And on rural safety as well, road safety is a $122 million program in the RLTP as well, draft RLTP.
And it's another 21 million to some other bits.
Yeah.
So that it is there. So I did talk through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Twyford offline about the seal and the financial assistance rate with that, and he said he was going to get officials to look into that. So you haven't heard anything back from them yet?
No.
All right, I'll follow that up.
That's fine.
Councillor Sayers?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, I Just to thank the officers for incorporating both the Franklin's and the Rodney local board's concerns that they raised this morning, and I've got a copy of the actual wording here that you've got, and it looks very appropriate. So thank you for doing that. So just acknowledgement of thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So do our words around the now we're calling it paragraph 8 early safety funding, and we're asking for early implementation of the new road safety strategy, and that includes the implementation of the speed management guide? That's part of that?
In a broad sense, my understanding is yes. I think what we just wanted, that's a very minor tweak. We didn't want incremental to be perceived as diminishing the importance of this issue. Really what we're saying with this point is, you know, we have a road safety crisis. It's important to do a strategy, but we can't sit on our hands for the next 18 months while that strategy is done. We actually need to get on and start making some safety improvements now.
Thank you. Any other input here? Councillor Newman.
Yeah, just a quick question regarding if, look, I fully support the changes as has been identified in the wording to address the matters raised by the local boards. So if the government accepts the proposed changes to the GPS and the FAR rates are amended, what is the consequential process for revisiting the assumptions in Auckland Transport Statement of Intent? Because presumably the FAR rates would be matching, and we would need Auckland Transport to try and do a bit more in relation to those network improvements and resealing in order to take advantage of the contribution that we would expect from Crown through a revised FAR rate. So could you just give me some advice on that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, in terms of the process, so my broad understanding is that the level of investment in the Regional Land Transport Plan is assuming a co-funding for most 80 activities, if not all of them already. And so this is really about ensuring that all of the government side policy decisions line up so that we actually ensure we get that 16.3 billion. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, just a general question that has been occurring to me in terms of the whole safety program and the road deaths and, you know, and the terrible trend that's emerged here. When I read a lot of the papers, a number of these bad accidents, no amount of safety engineering or anything else is going to prevent them, because there are people fleeing in cars, there are tourists on the wrong side of the road. There's just crazy behaviour, which, you know, in turn is obviously a reflection of other things going on in society. I'm assuming we're drilling down to that sort of detail when we're making these assumptions, you know, about the roading network and the improvements to intersections, and that or do we go into that sort of detail, or we just say it's a death, it's obviously linked into the road network somehow?
So my understanding is that there is very detailed information on all deaths and serious injuries, where they occurred, why they happened, etc., etc. The general approach to safety that we are heading towards is shifting away from, you know, needing everyone to behave absolutely perfectly, and then it's a disaster if they don't, to one that's more around, we accept that some people make mistakes or behave recklessly, and then the real question is, what can we do with our infrastructure investments to minimise the impact of that? So someone is, yeah, so there's an idiot, but at least they just drive into a wire barrier rather than driving into another car coming the other way. And so you're essentially minimising the impact of that behaviour.
So what Josh is saying there is we're looking at the externalities, I suppose, that poor behaviour or mistakes can make, and limiting that to the individual rather than a sort of a wider group of people.
Yeah, and lowering the impact of those mistakes. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Watson. Further questions on this, members? I think Councillor Walker.
Sure. I'll ask it as a question, Mr. Chair, and that is, why is it that we don't have any mention in here
around the impact, particularly of sea level rise on the transport network, when we know the costs for that are huge for raising roads and so on. I would have thought that would have been in there.
So compared to previous GPSs, the priority given to environment and resilience outcomes is higher. This puts it up there with value for money, safety and access, whereas previously there were safety, economic growth, productivity, value for money, and then environment and resilience was very much a second tier. And I think we've supported the raising of the prominence of environmental outcomes from transport.
And that includes resilience?
Yeah.
It does,
Thank you.
Thank you. On that, Josh, do you think it's high enough though? I mean, I've heard the Prime Minister talk about the nuclear-free moment being our addressing of climate change. Do you think that is reflected here though? I know that unlike the ATAP, which is pretty light on emissions, this is a bit more thorough. But does it need to be even stronger? Do we need to understand the impacts of greenhouse gas emissions that are generated from transport? I understand 17% of the nation's greenhouse gas emissions come from transport and 90% of it comes from
So
light
I think
vehicles.
one key point in this is that page 19 of the GPS, which makes mention of the second stage GPS,
Yep.
and the second stage GPS will include input from the Independent Climate Change Commission once that's established. So I think this is this has gone quite a long way, the GPS, from where it was previously, but I think the government recognises that it may not have gone far enough yet, but further work needs to be done for them to actually really be able to know what they need to add into this. So my sense is that that's probably fine, but if there are some minor little tweaks we can do in the wording change, then you get the delegation and B to see whether there's any small changes to our submission that we might need to make.
I'm just wondering if, that reference to the second GPS is actually part of the draft GPS because it's in there in a little box.
Yeah.
And I think it might be worthy of just acknowledging that there is further work to be done to address the greenhouse gas emissions.
I think that'd be a fairly easy change to make to the wording.
I'd support you on that, Mr Chair.
Thank you. It's moved and seconded. I think we've covered it well. Josh, Jim, you've been at the helm of this with Josh and David. So thank you very much. I think I think there were some 70 pages in the GPS from memory, 60, 70, and you've covered it off extremely well. And thanks for doing that on behalf of us. Thank you. Councillor Fletcher moved. Deputy Mayor seconded. All those in favour say aye. Contrary no. Declare that carried. Thank you. Jim. Okay. Now we'll go to our submission to another government initiative, and that's a change in the Local Government Community Wellbeing Amendment Bill. Bonnie May, Chance and Denise, of course, are with us. Bonnie May, are you going to lead this one?
Kia ora, thank you. Through the chair. Thanks for having us today. As stated, I'm here to talk about a potential council submission on the Local Government Community Wellbeing Amendment Bill. Just as some background, the bill's been introduced, referred to select committee, and it's open until the 25th of May, so that gives us some very tight turnaround times. Broadly, the bill seeks to reinstate the purpose of the LGA to promote the four well-beings: economic, social, cultural, and environmental, and to restore the power to collect development contributions to a wider group of community infrastructure. So that includes things like sports grounds, swimming pools, and libraries. The bill will have impact. It's a small bill, but it will have impact as it defines local government's purpose and the ability to collect funds. So in 2012 and 2014, when these amendments were made to the LGA, Auckland Council made submissions opposing both of them. So based on this background, a submission would be founded on evidence from the previous Auckland Council submissions. And broadly, the submission intends to support the bill. However, staff do need some time to do a robust analysis for any potential impact, especially around the changes to the development contribution scheme. And so to do that, we'd collect input from right across the council family, CCOs, IMSB, local boards, mana whenua. And so in short, we've got 3 recommendations: to approve staff to go ahead and develop a submission, to establish a political working group with a mix of chair and deputy chair from this committee, from the Environment and Community Committee, as they'll have a particular interest in the aspects of well-being to the bill, IMSB, and some local board members, and to delegate authority to that political working group to approve the final submission.
Thank you, Bonnie May. Some members, the B has been considered by discussion with the Deputy Chair of this committee, Councillor Hills, the Chair and Deputy Chair of Environment and Community Committee, Councillors Hulse and Filipaina. I think the IMSB, of course, should be there, and then to embrace some representation from local boards. The turnaround time is tight. There's no time to take reports to boards due to the submission period, which I think is just a month from memory, Bonnie May, isn't it? Is it a month? Or
Less than a month now.
Is it less than a month now? So that's the recommendation, and we do the work amongst that group, but I'm open to any other suggestions. Councillor Casey.
Oh yeah, I'm going to make one. I would really like to be on that, and I'd like to recommend myself and the Deputy Chair of Community Development and Safety are on it. Good reasons for that. The Local Government Act was passed in 2002. At that time I was in Parliament working for the Alliance as the Research Director and working for the Minister of Local Government, Sandra Lee. And you know, when you went to, I think it was Bill, did you go to the Select Committee to present the submissions against the changes? I offered to carry his bags and be the main support. So yeah, it should never have happened, and it's been put right. Was it you?
It's being disputed, Councillor.
Who presented the submissions in opposition?
I'm just trying to remember.
Could have been Councillor Webster.
I think it was
Oh,
Councillor
that
Webster.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's
Sorry.
carry on.
Just looked like
Oh no,
you would
just
like
it
to
should
be-
never have
He's not
happened.
here
And
now.
you know, this can't get put back. We are wedded to these 4 well-beings. They are an integral part of the Local Government Act. It should never have been tampered with in the first place.
Here, here.
So yes, so I'd like to input into that working
Penny
party.
Webster.
Happy to go to Wellington.
Yeah,
and
I'll back
wave
you up
the
there, Kathy.
spears.
Okay, I'm happy to add the
You bet.
Chair
You
and
bet.
Deputy Chair of the Community Development and Safety Committee.
Thank you.
I'd pay my own way and go down.
Yeah, me
frankly.
too.
You know, if you want to have a consortium.
We're going to have to
Posse.
drive to the airport or get a bus.
Okay,
You can only fit so
Any
many
other
people in a
inputs?
select committee room.
okay, that's
Very
good.
squished.
It's not just the 4 wellbeings members. I think, I mean, that's very, very important, but I think restoring the opportunity to
Late
collect
season boil,
development
Oh, absolutely.
contributions
Yeah,
on
absolutely.
libraries, aquatic centres, community halls, community centres, public toilets, and the list goes on.
That's
That
the
is
biggie.
very important, and
That's
that
the biggie.
changes our budget and delivery of building,
come back if you
building
don't win.
communities. Councillor Kuba.
I'm happy to move, Mr Chair, and I just think this is another thing that, why do we even need to work it up? We just do it. I mean, we just need the money, we need to build swimming pools, especially in the northwest. So let's just, I don't think it's going to take a long time. We're all supportive of it.
Councillor Fletcher.
Let's just do it.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Thank you.
Declare that carried. Bonnie May, thank you. Great work. Thank you, Denise. And 13, I'll move receipt.
Second.
Second. Councillor Casey, all those in favour say aye. Contrary, no. Declare that carried. Just check with staff. Thank you. Thank you to the staff, and thank you to the members. And I'll close the meeting.
Thank you, New Zealand.
Wonderful meeting, Mr Chairman. Wonderful.